I guess it is. There's no milk, lactose intolerance. That's it.
No Coke like Roy would have, right?
Huh?
No Coke like Roy would have,
I
right?
don't need a Coke. I don't need a Coke.
Hubert, I want to ask you, you were talking about spacing with your big men.
Yes.
How does rebounding play into the way you want to play? Do you sacrifice anything of that
3,
rebounding
4, 5.
emphasis?
Nope. 3, 4, 5 going to the offensive glass.
No different.
No different. We're going to be one of the best, if not the best, offensive rebounding team in the country. We're going to the offensive glass. That's who Carolina is. That's our foundation, and that's not going to change.
As an assistant coach, was one of your roles to kind of be the guy that puts an arm around the player every once in a while and kind of help them through some of those things that maybe a head coach doesn't always do? And now as a head coach, how do you balance jumping on guys, getting on them the way you need to, like we saw a couple weeks ago at practice, but also when to put the arm around them?
There's no difference in the way that I coach them now compared to when I was an assistant coach. There are times that I'll get on them, and there's times that I'll encourage them. I believe in encouragement. I believe in support. I have relationships with these players. I spend a ton of time with them. So when I tell them to box out, they don't take it personal because we've had lunch together. We've had breakfast together. They've been over at my house. We've gone bowling. And so it's all about relationships, the time spent with the players, and so that my communication on the floor is they don't take it personal, and we all know we're all on the same page.
Hubert, how do you balance the Carolina is Carolina, but this is 2021 and putting, kind of a modernization, if you will, of the style, playing style?
Well, as I said before, Carolina is going to be Carolina. We're going to get after the offensive glass. We'll play a fast pace. We're going to get after it from a defensive standpoint. We're going to share the basketball. We're going to play the right way. So those things will never change. But also, in my time as an assistant coach, there's things that I have learned and things that I have adopted and loved. There's two things really. Before I was an assistant coach, I never had thought about the idea of playing 2 point guards. Now I love it. I want 2 playmakers out there on the floor. When we had Joel Berry and Marcus Page, I felt very comfortable out there. So that's what I want. When we had Luke May, a big that can stretch the floor, make plays on the perimeter, Bryce Johnson, you know what? Those are the kind of bigs that I want. And so going into the transfer portal and getting Dawson Garcia and Brady Manick and Justin McCoy, we went after those guys. That wasn't by accident. That was intentional. In terms of the type of basketball that we want to play, the type of bigs that we want to play, and you're right, basketball has changed in terms of spacing and balance and movement, but you can still do that playing the Carolina way, and that's what I expect us to be like.
How are you going to mark this season a successful one?
Huh?
How are you going to mark this season as being successful for you and the team?
Well, we all have, goals, team goals. We want to win the regular season ACC title, the tournament title, get to a Final Four, and win a national championship. But, one of the things that I've always preached to the guys, and it's the way I was grown up, and it was watered with my experience in North Carolina with Coach Smith and Coach Guthridge, was to always focus on the preparation and the process. The end results will take care of itself. So we always tell the guys to show up and practice, make sure every day we do everything that we can individually as a team to get better, and at the end of the day, we live with the results. And I've never, when you focus on that, I've never seen it come back where you fail. I've always seen it being successful.
A lot of these guys haven't. A lot of these guys haven't seen a packed Dean Dome, even like the sophomores, because last year coming off a weird season. How excited are you for those guys to have that experience and for you to get it again?
I am. I'm really excited. That's one of the reasons why we brought back the blue-white game. When I was at Carolina, we didn't have late night with Coach Smith. It was just a blue-white game. And actually, it was right after a football game. So people would go to the football game, and then they would just jog down the hill and come to the blue-white game, and it would be an inter-squad scrimmage for 22,000. I wanted to bring that back, for our guys that haven't played in front of a crowd in the Smith Center, and especially for most of our guys that haven't played in front of that crowd in over a year and a half. And so I'm excited for Kerwin Okoro, RJ Davis, Caleb being able to run through that tunnel for the first time and see 22,000 in the stands. It's going to be an exciting night.
Coach, I'm going to so being a player, former player from North Carolina, an assistant coach, now the head coach, also being the first black head coach for the program. Is there a sense of pride that you have in this program, and are you pouring that out into the program and the players?
There is a pride in this program. I talked about that I had always been a Carolina fan. With my experience of my uncle Walter Davis, who was an All-American here in the mid-'70s, at the age of 4, that's all I wanted to do was to put on that uniform and run out of that tunnel and play for Coach Smith and be a part of this program and this university. So to think that I had that opportunity and chance, and then I also had that chance as an assistant coach for 9 years, and then for the last 6.5 months to be able to be a head coach, it puts you in a place of humbleness, thankfulness. It's a place that I love being in.
I would imagine that you've had several occasions where you kind of sit back and say, I am in this job, I am in this position. What is the biggest, if you had multiple moments like that, what is the biggest one where you just took a big exhale and said, wow?
I haven't had time to exhale. 6.5 months, it's been live action.
But have you had that, maybe a singular moment that stood out over the others, that settling in that you really are in this position?
You know what? Probably the one settling moment was the first day of practice. Not the first official practice, but the first practice that we had in the summer. And so all of us were together at midcourt, and we were going through the thoughts of the day. And it was really emotional to be in that place where Coach Smith, Coach Guthridge, and Coach Williams have been, to be in front of those guys that have trusted us, to see Coach Lebo standing next to his son Creighton, and Coach Lebo, who was my senior when I was a freshman. It was an emotional day. So if I could pick one particular point where it brought me to my emotions as being a head coach, it would have been that first time that we had official practice out there on the Smith Center floor.
You said in there that you don't compare yourself, but there is a standard, and the guys that have been there before you have set that standard.
Yep.
Do you feel that standard on a regular basis?
I don't feel that standard at all. I never compare myself to anyone. I never did that as a player. I never did that as an analyst. I never did that as an assistant coach, and I'm not going to do that now. Coach Smith is Coach Smith, Coach Guthridge is Coach Guthridge, and Coach Williams is Coach Williams, and I'm Hubert.
Coach, I want to piggyback off.
You know that this is a Coach Davis-led team when they consistently do this. What is that this?
One of the things that I always say is that I want them to adopt my personality. Off the court, I'm happy Hubert. On the court, it's live action. And just the ability to compete, to work hard every day, to have a single focusedness, to be the best that you can be out there on the floor. And that's the characteristics that I want. One of the things that we talked about is right before the press conference, I was talking about showing up. I want Carolina to show up every night. I want us to, our level of preparation, how we compete on both ends of the floor, how we practice every day. I want there to be a standard of how hard we work.
Coach, I want to.
The Carolina way is the Carolina way. It's not specific to me. The Carolina way is to be the best that you can be in 3 areas: on the court, in the classroom, and in the community.
Coach, you're gonna have a lot of firsts this year. If I can get my question in, please. You're gonna have a lot of firsts this year, and this is obviously one of them right here. What is this atmosphere like right here, where you're sitting in this spot as the head coach, and here at the media day?
I know. People ask me this all the time, and and I played at Carolina. I played 12 years in the NBA, and I was with ESPN for 7 years. So this is great. I appreciate all the cameras and the microphones, but I've been here before, okay? And so, yes, I have not been a head coach at the University of North Carolina before, but in terms of having these type of expectations, being on TV, being in the limelight, I've been there before. We're okay.
Hubert, the last couple of years have been difficult for the program, with 2020 before the pandemic, but even last year, and it took a toll on Roy a lot. It seemed like he really took a lot of that to heart. Where do you look at the state of the program right now in terms of the health of it, I guess, for lack of a better term, after these last last 2 years have been really difficult?
I think the state of our program is in the perfect spot. You know, when you have guys, veteran guys like Armando, and, who have been here for the last 3 years. One of the things that I talked about with Leaky is he has probably the most unique perspective of anyone. You know, his freshman year, we were the #1 seed going into the NCAA tournament, and then the experience that we've had over the last couple of years. And so he's seen the highs and the lows. Then you bring in 2 freshmen in state that have a passion and desire to be out there on the floor. I don't know if you've been at any of our practices, but there's a desperation amongst those guys. Our kids, they're desperate to be relevant. They're desperate to have their own stories and their own testimonies and their own memories. They don't want to hear about Coach Mays and Coach Lebo's and Coach Davis's and Coach Sullivan's memories. They want to have the experiences of playing in big games and making big shots and winning championships. It's a great place to be in.
So what can we expect different from?
You haven't had a ton of time to consider sort of being in this job and what that means. Was there a point when you were considering it or talking about it where you kind of thought about what would Coach Smith say and what would he think of this to see me in this job? Or is that just something that you can't?
No, I always think it's not just this job. There hasn't been a decision that I have made where I haven't thought about what Coach Smith and what Coach Williams and Coach Guthrie would say or do. We have these new shoes from Jordan, and on the side of it says "Dear D," and I wear those every practice because it has Coach Smith's name on the side of the shoes. It makes me feel like he's there. Every day at practice, we start on an odd number. Coach Guthrie was in charge of times, and he used to say the bus leaves at 2:47, or we'll leave for church at 3:23. And so every day at practice, we start practice at 3:01. And so Caleb Love was like, "Why do you start practice at 3:01?" And I said, "Well, first of all, he gave us that because so we could remember." He said, "You would remember 2:47 compared to the buses leaving at 3." And second of all, he wanted us to be on time. And so I start practices on odd numbers, and I wear Coach Smith's shoes out there on the floor.
What can we expect differently?
It says Dear D.
Okay.
Yeah, they're Jordan shoes.
What can we expect differently from this year's team compared to last year?
Well, you know, one of probably the major differences is just us on the offensive end. You know, we had really talented, unbelievable bigs last year, but they were traditional big bigs, where their strength was being able to score on the block. And so from a spacing standpoint, alongside our inability to consistently shoot the ball from the outside of Kerwin Walton, you know, it was tough to score, especially in a half-court set against a set defense. So, you know, this year with Brady Manick and Dawson Garcia and Justin McCoy, their ability to spread the floor and to make plays and to shoot the ball from 3 gives our guys the spacing to be able to use all their gifts and talents out there on the floor. And so that's probably the major thing that'll be different this year compared to last year.
What's the difference from Caleb Love evolving as a player and as a leader?
Oh, he's been off the chart. He's been fantastic. I mean, Caleb, on both ends of the floor, I really believe that he can be Defensive Player of the Year. His on-ball defense is outstanding. His ability to keep the ball in front of him. And then on the offensive end, now that we have that spacing and balance, with his strength and athleticism, he can get to the cup anytime he wants to. I think he's going to lead the league in free throw attempts because he can get to the basket, he can score and get fouled. And the thing that he's improved the most is just his passing ability. You know, one of the goals that he has set is he wants to lead the ACC in assists. And his ability to get into the lane and create plays for himself and also to others is going to put himself in a position to be able to reach that goal.
Do you really feel like you got one of the best front court players in the league over there?
100%. You know, Armando is a rare big that has the size, athleticism. He can run the floor. He's an outstanding rebounder. He can score consistently down on the block. And over the summer, he made 1,000 threes each week. And so now he can handle the basketball better. And he can shoot the ball from the perimeter. He is a modern big in the NBA right now. That's how good he is. And he's our leading scorer and rebounder, and he's going to have another unbelievable year.
How much of what happened last year around the league was the effect of COVID, with people, shutting down and starting back up and everything? And how much was it just kind of a cyclical thing where it was a young league and, now you've got more experienced players this season?
It is, but it was hard last year. You can't do basketball separated by 6 feet, You have to know each other. You have to build relationships. There has to be chemistry. You can't do that when you're 6 feet apart in the locker room, in the meeting room, at the dinner table. And we just didn't have those shared experiences about spending time together. It was basketball, and then everybody just went to their corners. It's been much different this summer. We spent so much time with each other off the court, and it's made us better on the court.
That having been said, was there anything positive that came out of last year in the experience that you can, draw on, or is it just one of those years you throw away?
No, we don't throw it away. I think it's always better when you have sophomore Caleb, sophomore RJ, and sophomore Kerwin Okoro compared to a freshman. I like that. I like experience.
Thank you.
In what ways have Coach Lebo and Coach Sullivan been most helpful to you since taking the job?
Well, Coach Lebo, I had to have him on staff. One, he's one of my best friends, and so we just work well together. We get along, and so to have him alongside me is something that I really wanted and needed. His experience, he's been a head coach. And so having that experience and being able to make decisions as opposed to just making suggestions, I needed somebody on staff that had experienced it. And he has at Auburn and also ECU. And then Coach Sullivan, we spent 2 years together here at Carolina, so we've been great friends. So we have that relationship. But his 18 years of experience in the NBA, one of the things that I really felt like is we needed fresh ideas, just a fresh outlook on both ends of the floor. Let's look at it differently. And he gives me that perspective every day, and I don't know where I would be without it.
How have the players responded to this too?
They love it. They absolutely love it. They love, Coach Lebo, and the funny thing is they don't know the history. They have no idea that Coach Lebo was a #1 high school recruit coming out. Like he was #1. They have no idea that he's #1 in free throw shooting percentage and #2 in 3-point shooting percentage in Carolina history. And so for them to find that out is really cool.
What are you looking to get?
Interest in playing like the Walker game a couple years ago, playing in Carmichael on any kind of regular basis?
I love to play in Carmichael.
Okay.
I love
Let's go
it.
back.
I love it. That would be emotional.
Yeah.
Because that's where I saw my first Carolina game. To say that I would be head coach for the men's basketball program in Carmichael, I would absolutely love to play. My dream is to play one non-conference and one conference game in Carmichael.
Really? So like the Walker game a couple years ago,
Yeah.
do it on a regular basis.
Yeah, and us winning next time.
What are you looking to get from Leaky this year?
You know what, Leaky, he's going to be great for us this year. Throughout his career, he's played a number of different positions. He's played the point, he's played small forward, he's played some power forward. One of the things that I've told him is that, I just want to simplify things. I think with his length and his athleticism, he can be an unbelievable defender. I really believe that. And I want him to focus on that. I think he can be a great offensive rebounder. So I really want him to focus on that, and then his ability to get to the basket and make plays. If you ask him from an offensive standpoint, the thing that he loves to do the best, he loves to facilitate, he loves to pass. He's always wanted to. And so having somebody 6'8" at the small forward position that can distribute to Caleb, to RJ, to Kerwin, to Armando, to Dawson, that gives us a lot of flexibility, and I'm expecting huge things from him this year.
Coach, being the shooter that you were in your career, does that give you a sort of like soft spot for Kerwin at all, or increase your desire to give him some open looks throughout the games?
No, he only averaged 6 shots a game last year. I never only shot 6 shots a game. As well he shoots, he shot 42% from 3-point range, 6 shots a game, and it's 2 parts. Number 1, we have to do a better job of getting him the ball, and number 2 is he has to do a better job looking for the ball. And so it's a 2-way street. And so this whole preseason and the start of practice, we have told him that he has to be aggressive. And so he has 2 names. Off the court, he's Kerwin. and then his Instagram name is Dr. K. On the court, he's Dr. K. That's somebody that's really aggressive on the offensive end.
Coach, what makes basketball in the state of North Carolina so special?
I mean, the history, the number of unbelievable great programs that, in terms of proximity, are close together. There's so many campuses that have, the uniqueness of campuses being close together, but to have North Carolina, Duke, and North Carolina State 20 miles apart, I don't know if any other place has that. I think that's what makes the history and the proximity what makes North Carolina basketball so unbelievable.
Coach Davis, from the fan perspective, you know how fans are coming. We're very spoiled. And like for even football season right now, like some of the fans are saying things that shouldn't be said. We're a lot more optimistic at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
Similarly to basketball, fans are going to be very optimistic. Overly optimistic. But what would you like to say to the fans? What are you expecting from them, like as far as a sense of understanding during this transitional period? Like, and just we're going to be 20,000 deep in Dean on Friday, excited, screaming. What would you say to them?
I know, the thing that I've said is the support for our players. One of the things, you look at Armando and he's 6'11", you look at Caleb and he's so athletic and quick, and you look at Dawson and Brady, and you forget that they're kids. That's what they need, is they need encouragement, they need support. You can always find somebody to say something negative or not be on someone's side. One of the things that I want is I want our fans, I want our fan base, I want our supporters to be so supportive of our players and understand that yes, they're talented, yes, they have expectations, but more importantly, they're just kids.
And lastly, I was at a lot of media were fortunate enough to be at a practice, and you got very upset and you sort of went into them on just on a discipline level, and it was shocking to me that you didn't use one curse word. And I know that's a story that's been going around, but I just wanted to know the truth to that as far as it dated back to Coach Dean Smith, and that's why you don't do it, or the reason why you don't use any profanity, period. But especially, I had never seen a coach at his team and not use any profanity in my life, and that was just very shocking.
I won't use any profanity. It first started at Carolina. I've never heard Coach Smith, Coach Guthridge, not one coach at Carolina in my experience ever use profanity. And so for an 18, 19-year-old kid to be able to have that example, being able to communicate and get your point across without using profanity, left a huge mark on me as an 18-year-old kid. If Coach Smith, it is Coach Williams' floor, but it's Coach Smith's building. And so he never used profanity, and I'm not going to do it as well. And then that's just a part of my regular language. One of the things that I always try to tell the guys, whether you're with your parents, with your friends, in church, at the basketball court, always communicate consistently in a way where wherever you are, you can talk the same way that you always communicate. And so that's the way I communicate. I don't use any profanity, and if our guys use profanity, then they're going to get on the line and run. It's important to me. In 10 years, I've used profanity once. It was at the game at Tennessee, when we played at Tennessee and we won, and we were in the huddle. And the next day, it was my scouting report, and I got in front of the team and I started crying, and I apologized to each one of them because it was important for me that their 4 years, they would say they never heard that from Coach Davis. And so for that group, they heard one from me, and I apologized, and I told them that would never happen again.
If I recall correctly, when Roy got the job, he said that Dean's role with him was that if he reached out to Dean and asked for something, Dean would have a response ready. What is your relationship with Roy as far as any kind of advice he may have for you, critique he may have for you, an element of the team? So I know he's been in practice a couple of times. How is that relationship now with him in that sense?
It's great. You know, Coach Williams recruited me out of high school, so I've known him for a long time. It's not just my experience in the 9 years as being one of his assistants. So we have a relationship. I love him being around. I told him that I wasn't moving into his office until they made an office for him in the basketball offices. So I want him around. He's been terrific, and I love him coming at practice. He comes to practice rarely. And but one of the things that I love is that anytime that I need to ask him anything, basketball related, off the court or whatever, I have the freedom and I'm comfortable at calling him at any time. And so that's just a relationship that we have.
Coach, what
recruit calls and says he's interested about NIL opportunities in Carolina? What's that conversation like?
A recruit?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you do have opportunities to recruit, you know, to talk to NIL about with a recruit. This is the thing that I'm so excited that our student athletes are finally now having the opportunity to, from a financial standpoint, get compensated off their likeness. I've always believed that they should, and I'm glad that we're at this place. One of the things that I have with the players and I will have with the recruit is that you need to check 2 boxes before you think NIL. Number 1, you got to have team success, and number 2, you're going to have to play well. So if we win and you individually win out there on the court, the NIL will take care of itself. That's an exact conversation that I have with the recruits and our current players.
Do you foresee using NIL though to the recruiting benefit of the program or within the rules?
Yeah.
You know what? And this is what I say. Carolina, my experience at Carolina, it's not a pit stop university. It's not a pit stop program. I want guys that are fully invested in this program and want to be here, whether they're here 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. I want you to unpack your bag, and I want both feet in. So those are the type of guys that I want. If somebody wants to use North Carolina as a pit stop and to use North Carolina for NIL deals, then that's not the guy for Carolina. They're not going to come here.
Coach, someone that I'm close with at UNC is actually Nemo Stewart. He had a chance to play with you on the JV team, and he's talked about the impact that you've made on his life and how he grew as a student. On the flip side, how has the JV team impacted your coaching career, and what have they done for you personally?
Yeah, it's great. A lot of people don't understand that Carolina has a JV program. Because of COVID, we haven't had the program last year, not going to have it this year. We're going to bring it back next year, but, you know, for the 9 years that I was an assistant, I was a JV coach for 7 of them. And so having that experience to write up practice plans, to put together practices, to set a rotation, to coach during the game. Yes, it's not the same as being the head coach at the University of North Carolina, but those are valuable tools that I have used to help me prepare for where I'm at right now.
How have you seen?
There's another coach at UNC who's known for his shoe game.
Yeah.
Is that something that we may see from you as some different shoe drip?
Yeah, we'll have some different shoe drip, but my favorites are Jordan 1 lows. That's all I would wear. At 51 years old, I want things that are comfortable. And the Jordan 1 lows are my most comfortable shoe. I like the 11 lows, but Jordan 1 lows. So I'll be wearing all different types of styles, but it will be the Jordan 1 lows.
What shoes are you currently wearing now, Coach?
Huh?
What Jordans are you currently wearing now?
Right now?
Yeah.
These aren't Jordans right now. These are just Nikes. But I love those Deer Dean shoes. And but any Jordan 1 lows, I got those. You come in my office, they're all just draped around my floor of my office.
What are your favorite Jordan lows?
It doesn't matter what color. Any. No, just any. It doesn't matter.
How have you seen Armando mature the last couple of years, and how has his regular basic maturity helped him with his basketball maturity?
He's been great because now he's in a leadership role. You know, he's a guy that not only is our leading scorer, returning scorer, and rebounder. You know, he's a guy that has experienced a number of big games here. You know, in terms of outside of Leaky, he's our most experienced player, and so the biggest The difference in Armando is his leadership. You know, as I said before, there's a desperation amongst the players to be relevant. One of them, and probably the most, is Armando. You know, he came to Carolina to win a national championship. He came to Carolina to be in big games and make big shots. And over the last 2 years, and particularly 2 years ago, he hadn't had that experience. And this is something that he wants at his time at Carolina, and he's put himself in a great position to be able to do that.
Coach, when you played for DC, correct me if I'm wrong, if a player let out a curse word, or you heard a curse word, there was a penalty. Is that true? And
Yes.
what is your philosophy on that? Are your players going to get penalized if you hear a curse word?
Yeah, if Coach Smith heard profanity, everybody would get on the line and we would run sprints. My policy is the same policy. If I hear anybody use profanity, we'll get on the line and we'll run sprints.
And that's a little bit of a contrast because obviously Coach Williams went out a few now and then.
Well, you know, I have to filter things through my own experience, and you know, I know what a huge impact that made on me as an 18, 19-year-old kid. Seeing how Coach Smith and Coach Guthridge communicated in that way, and to honor them, that's something that I want to give back to the players today.
How often have you had to do that?
I haven't had to do it one time.
So you just told them before the season, hey, do this will happen?
Yeah, before every time that we warm up, we stretch, warm up, and they go do individual work, I let them, each player gets to choose their own play mix. And so I've told them, in the weight room and in the locker room, you can boom it up. You can do whatever you want to. But in the Smith Center floor, everything's got to be clean versions. And so they find a clean version, and then they put on their music.
Hubert, Roy was adamant every 4 years he was going to Maui. Do you have any scheduling?
I'm going to Maui. Yeah, I'm going to go to Maui. We'll go to the Bahamas. You know, there's one place that I want to go that we haven't been. I remember my time at Carolina. We always played in New York City. You know, we always played in the Garden. You know, we either played Notre Dame or somebody. A couple times. Preseason NIT. Sometimes we would play over at the Meadowlands. We hadn't played in New York. And for me, being a former New York Knick, one of the best places to play a basketball game is in Madison Square Garden. So when I became head coach, one of the first things that I said is we got to find a way to get us to New York City. Playing the NIT tip-off, or we'll just schedule somebody, but I want our guys to have the experience of playing in Madison Square Garden.
About 5 minutes.
Coach K's last season here, I'm sure you've been asked ad nauseum, but what has he meant to the game of basketball? What has he meant to the ACC?
Well, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time, not just college basketball, not NBA, FIBA, whatever, in any sport. And so his devotion and his ability to get the best out of his team and his players for so many years is unmatched. One of the things that I think about is that last regular season game. You know, Carolina Duke, it's perfect. It's perfect for us to be there on his last home game and what this rivalry means. And to think that I've been able to experience it as a player, as an assistant coach, and now as a head coach, is a pretty cool deal.
You mentioned that when you were Coach Lebo, Coach Sullivan, some of the guys you're really close with. When you were at the pro level, who were some of the players that you had closest?
You know, this will shock you. You know who was the person that I was the closest with in 12 years in the NBA? Christian Laettner.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. We played together for the Dallas Mavericks.